Pick up.
3, 2, 1.
This regular meeting of the Wetzel County Board of Education is called to order. We will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Yeager. I will share an invocation. Please stand, and any wish that does not participate may stay seated.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father, we continue to ask your blessings upon us as we strive to make decisions and choices that will benefit the students and the staff of Wetzel County Schools. We know, Father, we're in difficult challenges and difficult times, and we just pray your blessings upon all those that are working so diligently to create an educational environment for all of our students. We pray for the students who have been struggling and challenged by the inability to be in our classrooms, and we pray that you would be with us and that the things happening in our community would continue to be such that we can open our schools and that our children can come back and get back involved in the educational process. We realize that our administrators, our teachers, all the service personnel, everyone has been challenged, and we appreciate them, Father. We pray your blessings upon them as they go through challenges and difficulties that maybe they've never even imagined would be part of the education process. Father, we just continue to thank you for the blessings that we have in this country. We're thankful for the ability that we even have to provide this educational system for those here in our county. Be with us and guide us and direct us. Give us wisdom today, and we pray this through Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
The first item on our agenda is Superintendent Information.
President Price, I'm just let you know today was the first day for staff. So I started my day off. I got a nice text from Mr. Batten that said, I have the bus drivers and aides at the auditorium. Will you come over? And we talked earlier, so went over and talked to the bus drivers and aides. It was a unique situation. He had them all spaced out. I think there was a row in between everybody at Magnolia's auditorium, but he'll give you a little update of what happened in that meeting there, but very positive. But a lot of communication on the phones. We did not go around to all the schools at this time. We've got five days this week, 5 next, to get out and about. And again, we're visitors coming in, so we want to try to make sure we try to do the same as policy that everybody else is doing. So with that, met with AFT leadership the other day. I had a meeting with them, just constant meetings, getting information, providing you all with information and written updates from the State Department. Now we've got the SSAC giving us updates. So with some of the reentry, if I can answer any questions, we'll just continue moving forward and just try to get communication out there. So that's really is brief. I've got a letter there on your desk that Joe Beth put together for me. It's going out to all the staff, just an opening letter. Again, normally we have 3 to 4 days before we open up and have a playing day and a few CE days and sometimes a big kickoff. But things are different this year. And again, we'll just try to be patient and just see what we can do to get through this and continue, like you said, the education process. Thank you, Mr. Price.
Were there any delegations? I didn't notify them.
Okay.
No delegations. So the next item on our agenda then will be a continued board discussion as we've been having possible action as it relates to re-entry. Board members, are there any questions or things that you have as it relates to re-entry?
You know, I'll have a question.
You're fine. You go right
I was
ahead.
waiting for anybody else.
No, you're fine.
How many hours a day will the remote teachers be working?
Mr. Marcus, do you know that answer? How many hours a day? Or does anybody know exactly hours? I don't know.
I think a lot of that will depend on what the numbers are of the students in the schools. If it's going to be that's their sole job during the day or not.
Okay. Well, I just saw the national professional board standards for teaching listed for different grade levels, what they recommended for hours. And so I didn't know if we were doing a specific seminar amount of hours, if you were elementary, middle, or high school or not, but that just sounds like we haven't decided
It's
that.
probably worth clarifying that that's hours of work, not necessarily hours of preparation and work.
Correct. Oh,
So
no,
teachers
I
would need
realize that.
time.
I'm glad you, yes, you're right. You're right. But I just wondered, I guess as a parent, kids, I was thinking, how many hours am I gonna be on if I was the parent with the kids? And then they'll do more at home, you know.
Well, for the kids, and someone else can correct if I'm wrong, but for the kids, you know, there's gonna be times when teachers ask them to be on at a certain time.
Right.
There's also gonna be times where it's more self-paced at their house.
Right, right.
So it's not gonna be.
I was thinking how much virtual time are they gonna be on screen time?
Okay. I have not seen anything like that with the state department.
Okay.
If anybody else has.
Okay.
I did see something that was sent out last week from, I think Mary.
Yeah,
Mary
there's
sent that out?
standards for that, that's probably what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's what that is, and it was recommendations is what it was.
Yeah, that
as
may
far
be
as
from the
that's
same
concerned.
source.
We're gonna evolve, I think,
Mhm.
as to how much time we're gonna be putting in there. I think the better we get at it, the better, communication, instruction, and also the kids will probably enjoy it more so when we get better at it, and I think, that'll evolve.
Now, will all our remote teachers be in the schools, or will some of the remote teachers be able to teach from home if they have very serious health conditions?
Good question. Right now, from the State Department, the governor's office said, or the State Department said that if we did fully remote, that everybody would be reporting to school. So I think that's some flexibility. If you guys would grant that maybe we could do some things. And again, what's best for somebody may not be best for someone else. So I think if we can work and be flexible with that, I think that would be huge.
Yeah, because I think that, having myself been close to death a couple times, and
Yeah.
there's a couple other people in the county that have contacted me, I truly understood their scare, their worry.
You know, and since you brought that up, I mean, you see things all over the state that's doing things differently. You know, originally they said that, you know, maybe they could come to work. If the governor said fully remote, then everybody would come to work. Then they brought up about what about their own children? What's going on there? You know, I've seen a flexibility on Wednesdays on the deep cleaning day, that maybe an early release, that teachers get out that therefore they gave up for their playing period or lunch period because they were eating in the classroom. So there's a lot of flexibility that would maybe just communicate that with the schools. Did you hear that with Mrs. Wells or Mrs. Stanford? There's ideas of maybe doing things like that. What about our you know, students or staff that have children? What do they do on Wednesdays? You know, is that something that we could possibly bring them in? I don't know. There's all that discussion there to try to figure out what's the best. And then again, what's the schools able to do some things differently.
So what we're saying is, there's nothing in stone yet on some of these
No,
things.
and again,
Okay.
do you bring
That's
every
all.
little
Yeah.
decision to you all, or do we try to trust? I think right now you guys said school-based leadership to see what they can work out and see what they can do that way. I think yeah, those are tough decisions on some of those things. If they did fully remote and what we can work, and then the kids could be in their classroom with their teacher. But then again, what do you do on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? You know, do they send them to Mrs. Fonner that's teaching the 5th grade and I'm teaching 6th, and I say, oh no, you gotta go down there with my 6th grade student, you know what I mean? So they're all right out there, but we're trying to just come up with a plan.
So it's, as long as I know it's still being worked on.
Still trying to come up with a plan of, every day there's new items come that we haven't been able to solve that we're trying to come up with. But am I answering that fairly, do you think, Mrs. Wells, Mrs. Stanford? I mean, think,
Every day there's something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every day I
Yeah.
think of something else too, or something
Yeah.
calls me.
Mhm.
And then another question, now that everybody had to sign up already for remote by now, correct?
Mr. McPherson, has that everybody
People
signed
are
up?
still signing
Yeah,
up.
people signed up today.
Oh,
People are
okay,
still signing up as of today.
okay.
We had
So we
5
don't know numbers yet, or?
I can tell you where we are before I left the office 20 minutes ago, if you wanna know. And that was a total of 589 throughout the county, out of approximately 2,400 students that we have.
You know, I don't know whether, maybe this would help answer your questions better if we just run through from our directors an update and go through, and that would be huge to give you, because I think Mr. McPherson had numbers from, what was it, 490 something just on Friday, but as you said, it's what, 5 something now?
Yeah, I have the picture both on.
We could go right through.
498 on, I think it was Thursday at 4:50 when I last did it.
And Mrs. Wells is comfortable to go through how things are going with the high schools, Mrs. Stanford with the elementary schools, and we can go right through. Mrs. Novotny had a special ed meeting today coming in. Mr. Batten has been update. Mr. Lancaster was going to wait for treasurer's report to give you some nice data that he put together. Mrs. McPherson has some expectations that she did with the employees. That's pretty neat that she put together. Mr. Cook has got a request to maybe ask for additional support for some distance learning, and I think that's off just the top of my head that quick of what we have. So would you want me to just run through that way, and then
Well,
we'll go
give
to
me my
director's
last
report?
question, and then it'll be
Okay.
fine. That's fine with you.
Could I,
Yeah, sure.
Mr. McPherson, could you repeat that figure?
Yes, I could.
Please,
Make sure I'm right.
as of what,
As of 5/29 today,
Okay.
589.
589 are
Distance.
distance learning? Okay, thank you.
It's interesting to figure that out because I think some folks misunderstand, and every time we call them, they fill it out again. I had one person fill it out
Yeah.
11 times for their child,
Oh
so
my
I had to go
goodness.
through and zap it out and make it look right.
Mr. McPherson, was you able to determine which ones were West Virginia virtual, or most of them are?
Well,
Russell County?
that sign up is strictly for our
For
virtual.
ours.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's Wetzel County, right?
Yes, that's Wetzel
Okay.
County.
Any numbers on the West Virginia virtual? Or
I don't have any of those.
Okay, gotcha. So.
Okay, my last question on that then is, originally I thought we were gonna do it like the state did it, and they'd go a couple weeks and then they had to make their decision whether they're gonna stay remote or come in, but then I heard stories that they're allowed to come in and out. Is that true, or am I imagining?
The matrix will be, Mr. Price had the best way of explaining that. He was pretty good when we talked when that come out with the different color system. You went through the 1,000. Is that what you're talking about that?
No, I'm talking about, let's say that my son,
That's part of our
Ben,
policy,
is
right?
remote.
Oh, I was gotcha.
And then
Okay.
he decides next week, Mom, I really don't like this, I'd rather go to school with the kids. And I say, okay, you can go to school with the kids. Can that happen throughout the whole
Here's
semester?
our thinking on that. That was part of our policy revisions coming up
Sorry.
later in the board meeting. You
Right,
know,
I saw that.
At the end of last month, you all passed the policy that was the state template that they had 2 weeks.
Right.
But then we started having a lot of concerns from parents, as well as you all were getting concerns as well, and we had internal discussions here. There's a lot of scenarios, different ways. If you've got a kid who's in the building, and let's say it's October 1st or November 1st, whatever, and the numbers start going up and the family doesn't feel comfortable, then I don't think we say, you made your choice on August 15th, tough. So we have to be flexible and allow them to go to remote learning. And on the other end, if you've got a family who's in remote learning, and now they do feel comfortable, or they want their child around their peers, they have daycare issues, etc., there will be a lot of different scenarios there going the other way. So what we've been telling the families is, you know, there's gonna have to be some reasonable accommodations, case by case, but if you work with us, we'll work with you. And they seem to understand that.
We just have to look and see if numbers start to get real big.
Absolutely.
Correct.
You know, and some of the, and I'm not just, I know we always mention New Martinsville School, but not just New Martinsville School, because there's some bigger classes in the county too, that right now they may look okay, but if they have many come back in, they're gonna be back to a big class again and not be able to social distance.
Well, and also it could be, it depends on the numbers again. So it could be a situation where if they do come back in, the person who was distance learning teacher, now you don't need them to be a distance learning teacher, now, so you spread the kids out again. You see what I'm saying? So your
But I'm
numbers
just saying,
come
what
back
if you get down to one student that's distance learning with you and everybody else is big classes? I hope that doesn't happen, but
Right.
that could.
But I guess if you set a deadline anywhere, then you're taking that flexibility away from the families of being able to make that decision, what they feel is best for their kids.
I understand those concerns in terms of numbers, but I think in some ways we gotta make decisions based on what we know in the moment.
Yeah.
And we can't necessarily, because if we wanted to play those number scenarios and draw them out months and months and months down the road, we could, you know what I mean, it's
Right.
endless.
You're right.
And we kinda have to.
Right now, we're at 25%.
Yeah, and so I think you kinda gotta go with that, but I've always felt the flexibility is important, and I think sometimes we gotta remember, it's hard for us sometimes to know where we sit and what our role in all this stuff is, but we also answer to the taxpayers of Wetzel County, and why at least in my mind, we did Wetzel County distance learning was because we wanted to serve those families.
Correct.
And not everyone has internet to be able to do it virtual. It would have been great if every single household had internet service and we could have just said, we're gonna do an online, so you either pick the online version or the in-person version. How sweet that would have been, right? Nice and easy and clean.
Correct.
But it's not, instead we're, and I appreciate the fact, I realize it's hard, I realize it's got infinite challenges,
Right.
and there'll be new challenges around every turn, but I really feel strongly that we need to serve those families. you know, Wetzel County residents have been good to Wetzel County schools.
And we-
And they need us right now.
And we all agree, we understand it's gonna be, there's gonna be some scheduling issues, we understand that.
Yeah.
But we feel it's best for families.
And as far as I know, and we could go around, and I'm good either way as far as letting
Yeah.
everybody chime in here, but so do we know what distance learning looks like at all of our buildings yet? Do we have a general idea of what distance learning, Wetzel County distance learning looks like?
Well, I'm gonna meet with my principals, elementary principals on Wednesday.
Okay.
And we're gonna come up with expectations of distance learning for teachers.
Okay.
And we're gonna have something come together on that, some expectations. As for the teachers themselves, we've really been crunching the numbers. I've got a chart going for every school, every grade level, how many distance learners we have, what teachers we need. And we've had, New Martinsville School has basically, we're good there except for sixth grade distance learning teacher. So, we gotta work with that, but again, we're gonna bring all those numbers together on Wednesday. And that's the final, we're gonna crunch everything down.
And Mr. Bryce, we met, the high school principals and I met last week, and at this point, the high school principals feel comfortable with serving the students that have signed up for distance learning with their teachers in their school. That's what their
Okay.
teachers prefer at this point.
I understand.
If the numbers would get any bigger, we might reconsider and have to go to doing what Mrs. Standiford is doing and crunching numbers and deciding who's going to be teaching what. But at this point, they wanna take care of their own kids and feel that they have the numbers to do it. Hundred High School is the only school that indicated there might be a little bit of a problem with that because they've decided to go back 4 days. But right now, and Mr. Cook is going to go over with you some, questions that we have about additional staffing and stuff like that. Right now, they might need a little help, but nothing to the extent of having, full-time teachers in each of the subject areas like we were going to ask for, so.
So if there are teachers in any of these schools that I asked in my earlier question that would like to teach remote but don't want to be in the school because of their health condition, are they still going to be allowed to teach for the schools?
I think Mr. Tillman, you said we needed to be flexible enough to allow that to happen.
Okay.
The board has blessed that, am I accurate?
I think you guys, I mean, the pleasure of the board, I mean, is that what you think? I don't know what we open up if we do allow them or don't allow them. I mean, that's just uncharted territory.
I've been getting, different teachers coming to me without, putting any names out there or anything like that, but we're trying to accommodate them. There's a lot of anxiety out there. We're trying to accommodate them with whatever they need to feel good about their classrooms and to move forward, teaching in the buildings. I think it would be hard, somebody more senior than them may decide, as far as the union's concerned, that they want that position if we come out with it. So it would have to take, the union to agree and all the people that are, above that person to agree, to that situation if that really happened. But you just may be opening up, the box.
Mr. Cook sent out a memo with some examples of possible ways of doing that at each of the school levels, so that's what they worked on too, and going to the least senior would have been a possibility if we needed those numbers, so that was
And I'd gotten a phone call from one of the unions the other day in regards to some questions. So I put out some information there the other day, and it seemed to blow up, earlier today then, and all I was doing was responding to, information from a union rep who asked me, how would this work? And, it was in no way, shape or form saying that they had to do it this way. It was just
an option.
It was an option that I put out there for the principals if they wanted to, as far as assigning distance learning. I think they had to look at the most senior person if they wanted it. Then they would have to be offered that position if it was, let's say the 5th grade level and they had 6 teachers, that they would have to go to the most senior person of those 6 teachers to see if they wanted it down. And then if nobody wanted it, the least senior person would probably be the one that would have to take it then. And I know that at least one of the grade levels somewhere didn't like that. And as I said, it's just an option. we got a lot of smart people out there that I think can come up with some ideas as to ways things could work for them in those buildings, and they are. And the high school has decided, as Tammy just said, and Mrs. Wells, that the high school teachers are finding a way to teach their kids, and a lot of the elementary teachers are saying, I want my kids. I don't want somebody else to have them. And I understand that too, and I think if they do that, then they got a smaller amount of kids to deal with, instead of being one distance learning teacher with, say, 23 or 24 students, or 23 students, which I think that can work too, but it's just all in how people wanna be flexible and work together as a team.
So the concern that was raised today was not concerning a policy that is in place, it was only a possibility, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Just to make it clear, cause I'm sure.
Yeah, there's no policies out there as far as this,
Okay.
we're
And with somebody that had immune compromise or something, is
Right.
that possible with our lawyer? I don't know, I haven't checked on
I
that
think,
one.
what he was saying was exactly, what I just said as far as the union was concerned, that they would have to, agree to it and, sign off on it, along with those individuals that are more senior to that person, to allow them to take that position.
The flexibility for somebody from distance learning to work from home or something like that, is that anything that we open up an issue with personnel? I don't know if that,
I think that's a
I'm not
decision
sure.
that
I know that it could
The five
open up,
people.
you know,
Yeah.
some different things, but
Yeah.
at the same time, if we truly hold up our staff
Yeah.
as valued people in this county, that we need to, if they do have these serious health conditions, that this is a serious thing, and they've
Yeah.
got, everybody needs to realize too, not just the big schools. You know, you're out in the county, you go out to 100, and you've got teachers, yeah, you may have the small community, but you've got teachers coming in from Pennsylvania and Morgantown and all different places too. I think the big thing is we have to really push the safety. To hear somebody say, this is just a hoax, or I don't like to wear masks, or I'm not gonna wear them, we can't, every school has to be adamant to stick to the policy.
And putting everything in writing right now, I don't know how we can, you know what I mean, and have you guys approve every
Oh, no, you
detail.
can't.
That's
No,
the
I
hard
realize
part.
that. I'm just-
But I'm trying to make a
Yeah.
decision to make sure I see you all support, that it comes back to you, so we don't have every week is crazy. So trying to look at it as what's the best thing for every individual and every student, what we can do that's correct, so that's the way I was looking at it. How you guys view that as the board, I think, is, I don't see anybody looking at me thinking that I totally disagree with you, but
No, I think everybody,
Yeah, I think we're
everybody's
just all-
supportive
Yeah,
of
that's-
what works out best for everybody, safety-wise.
Absolutely.
Right,
and-
safety's gotta be first.
So that's where that's why I felt I'd have that support from you all to put that out that way and say that. So when you asked me about, somebody, I think we tried to do the best we could to be flexible with them. I think it's fair.
And I'm assuming those numbers of people making that request are small.
It's at this point in time, I think I had 8,
Yeah.
7 or 8 at this point in time.
I was thinking it was probably about 15 by things, somewhere in there. By the
That
time
I've
things
seen
come in.
paperwork on.
Yeah.
I-
And we
eight-
put that out there to see Mr. Cook about that request and that.
Eight out of, just so it in my mind, and the people listening, how many employees we have?
490, rough.
Pretty good.
490.
Yeah, it's really not that many.
The letter.
It's not
Just
that
put-
many, it's a small
letter.
percentage, but if they need it.
Thank you very much, I just wanted
Yeah.
a
She
perspective.
just printed
Yes.
letters for all the employees, so she had counted that out, so that's good, Joe, right?
8 out of 10 would have been rough.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is a concern for all employees.
It is.
Absolutely.
I had a very young, healthy teacher tell me that, he was concerned, he teaches high school,
Yes,
and,
sir.
he doesn't know where high school students are in the evenings and so forth, and they come to school,
And-
and he's concerned about his health, even though he's very healthy.
In this conversation here, we
Yes.
may have some more requests, so as I said, I don't know, we're trying to have, the principals have taken a huge lead and done a great job along with, the directors monitoring that with them, and in communication, I can't argue on anything, and it's been, smooth every morning. I mean, got a director that got an email late night, and we got the email early the next morning. I mean, they're coming up constantly, asking questions, so.
I do want to make the statement that this board has not mandated any plan
No, sir.
or any method for any school. In fact, we went just the opposite. We
I-
want the schools to develop their own plans, how to make this work. It's all new, so, you know, we have never done it before. And that's what I understand is that the schools have the power to meet and develop, and if they come up with a better idea, as a group of teachers, they need to go to their principal, and then that principal needs to go to their director or to the superintendent.
In some I'm sorry.
We'll provide the tools and materials necessary for them to do their job, but we can't build the house. They need to do that. So I think there's a misconception out there that the board is mandating
Right.
all this, and
No.
that's not the case.
No, and we went over that with them. I even had it in an interview the other day that it's site-based leadership that was mentioned, I believe.
And on the other side of that, we'll support it. You know, we're not, this isn't about somebody making a decision so that somebody can be blamed if it goes wrong. This is about giving people power to make the best decisions for their environments with our support. And I think that need, and not that that hasn't been understood, but I think it needs clarity, and I appreciate Mr. Rivers' thoughts. Is there any, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Mrs. Cooley?
So you said at the high school level, they're pretty well gonna take care of their own students. For the rest of the classes, is it going to be like one distance learning teacher for all of Wetzel County, or?
In elementary?
I'm sorry?
Elementary.
For the most part.
New Orleans will probably have one for each grade level themselves.
And they'll be taking care of the whole county? Or no, you're saying just for themselves?
Just for New Martinsville. Like they have on the average anywhere from 17 to 20 in each grade level. So, pre-K we have to work on because that's changed. But kindergarten through 6th grade, and then the middle school is going to take theirs and take care of them themselves too. So within the schedules. The other schools, the other 3 schools, in most cases, one teacher will cover the other 3 schools, but in a couple cases it may take 2. Because you can't go over the numbers we're supposed to have. Like if you're only supposed to have 23 kids, that's all you can have is distance learning.
You know, I'm just gonna say it, I applaud everyone working on this, and I cannot imagine that level of stress, because my mind explodes when you start talking about the numbers and needing and all the possibilities, just all of this. It's so overwhelming, and I can't imagine what you guys are feeling, because I drew out a calendar real quick and how close we are to the start of school. And we're still sitting here saying, you know, it's not determined yet. And it just makes my anxiety rise. So
But I do wanna say elementary, the teachers are determined. We're pretty well there.
I have no doubt about that.
We're pretty well.
I've never doubted anyone's determination, anyone's dedication, and that's what I mean by I applaud everyone on this. From you guys, from the teachers, the principals, everyone. I am overwhelmed. I can't imagine what anyone else feels. And I feel the support, not only from everyone here, I feel the support from the community. I hope you guys feel it as well. It's just, it's a different year. We have to be flexible, and overwhelming is not a good word, but it's the best word I've got.
But I want to tell you, and Amanda is over the nurses also, so she has some pretty interesting titles that she's been over during this whole pandemic, from food service to the nursing and everything else going on. But she had a meeting with the nurses, and I don't know if you were going to talk about that, but it's incredible with the nurses and from the health department, from Karen Kane and Ashley for the nurse. And like I said, they had a whole lot of questions. That was just when the COVID identification of a COVID outbreak came out, and then again it was kind of embargoed. It wasn't really said embargoed, but it wasn't out all the way, so we didn't release all that information out there at that time. But there's a lot of questions. That was huge when that came out. Go ahead, Amanda. You can talk about a little bit of that. Was an incredible meeting.
We met directly before the
the initial email came out with that information. Of course, you know, our nurses had a lot of questions for the health department. We really tried to hash some things out and to try to get some solid answers. Our nurses are absolutely amazing. They worked so hard last week and will continue to do so. One area that stands out to me, and Mr. Lancaster was in on this one, he received a request for some desk shields. And we were waiting for some clarification. Are we allowed to take our masks off if we're seated behind one? And the initial thought was yes, that'll be fine. We'll be able to not have to worry about the social distancing. We can take the masks off. And within, what was it, 45 minutes, less
Well,
than that?
I know I was typing the email, and the email said this can be a game changer, because if you can get a desk shield and not have to wear masks, I mean, you could go 5 days a week. I mean, you could change everything. But go ahead, yeah.
And
As I'm typing the email.
as he's typing this email, I remember I walked out of the room where the nurses were meeting. I walked back in, and they said, hey. And I hate it when they do that. I'm like, what? And it had changed that fast, where if you had that shield, you still had to wear your mask unless you were 6 feet apart.
That being said, and I'll go over that briefly, that being said, we're still ordering from most schools. They're still wanting those individual desk shields. So most schools were fulfilling that need. I mean, the cost of that's close to $70,000 for our county. But I'll talk about that when it gets.
If you want to do it this time, I'm fine with
Now-
whatever you want. I mean, it's still the same re-entry.
I didn't want to step on your toes.
It's
Anybody?
fine. I also had a phone call, it was last Monday, with the State Department nurses specifically. We had a follow-up call today. One of their big concerns is privacy of those. Maybe they are showing symptoms, maybe they have to go visit the nurse, and how do we keep that privacy? So the nurses developed a code of conduct, so to speak. But basically just a reminder to everyone that, you know, you don't put things out on social media. The phone calls to parents are to come from the administrator or the nurse. You know, basically things like that. It's just a nice reminder to everyone that, you know, we each, you don't want your business aired. Don't air someone else's. So.
Here's a treasury issue, we can wait.
Okay.
Let's wait till it
Okay.
comes
Sure.
up and that's a part of your report, that's fine. Anything else that relates to reentry, directors, anything else you want to share with us tonight?
Then they'll go over on other items, they'll separate and go that way, if that's
That's
okay,
fine.
Mr. Price.
I do have one, I do want to talk just briefly about the grill in the room, and that's not me, that's, the attendance at extracurriculars as part of the reentry.
I was gonna bring it up.
I think we need to make sure there's clarification, cause anytime, cause here's what happens, what comes out of the state 9 times out of 10 is recommendation. And so they call it a recommendation. And so everybody interprets recommendation meaning take it or leave it. I can do it or not do it. I think it's important for us, whether that's the specific recommendations we follow or we devise something else, we can talk about that, which way you want to think about that. But that is an area I believe, and my colleagues can disagree with me, that we do need consistency throughout this county. We cannot have one school's having one policy as it relates to attendance to extracurriculars, and another school have another policy, and another school have another policy. To me, that's an area where there's got to be consistency, because you can only imagine what will happen if you get to the point where you say, well, Valley did this, but Magnolia couldn't do that, and they had to do it this way, and 100 did it that way, and Payne City did it this way. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, don't be sorry, I had my hand up when you were talking, that
You're
was
fine.
rude. The high school principals and the athletic directors are planning a Zoom meeting to cover that very topic that you're discussing, because they agree with you, they do not want it to be different at the school.
Okay.
So before probably, well, I know that tomorrow's being discussed as a date, but before Wednesday, they will have met and made their recommendations, so.
Okay.
And we make that public?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that the public
I mean, that-
knows,
I think that's
you know,
why I
what
know
this
that.
says right now, and these were passed out just now, I don't plan on going, because I don't meet the criteria.
Absolutely.
So as much as I'd like to go watch a football game, I'm not gonna go, because I'm not part of that criteria. But that probably involves, for instance, an English teacher at the school. They're not part of that criteria.
Unless they're taking gate money,
Exactly.
or, yeah,
Unless they're part of the athletic department, yes.
right.
So, but Mr. Price is right. It needs to be the same at Magnolia as it is in Under.
And they agree,
Because if it isn't, we'll hear about it.
yes.
Ms. Wells, will you be a part of that?
If I'm not in the middle of interviews, yes. If it is tomorrow, I can do it.
In everything that we've received, I've never seen anything mentioned about band. Now, I know that they are recognized by the SSAC. In theory, it's just never written out. And in the email we received, it even broke it down, you know, it had football and everything else, never mentioning band. And I just wanna make sure that it's noted that as well, because that's another set of parents that will be expecting to be able to attend games, assuming the band is playing.
They addressed that in a SSAC Zoom meeting this morning at 10:30.
Okay.
The band was specifically mentioned, they will not be performing at home games or away games.
They will not?
They will not.
At least for the time being.
For the first 2 weeks. They're
Mrs.
And they went on, they started breaking it down, the meeting got a little, Mrs. Wells, were you listening to that meeting?
I was not invited to that meeting, however, my principals were keeping me up to date as the meeting was going on.
They,
So, yes.
Parkersburg High and some other schools have dance teams, and they said, no dance. No dance, it got really complicated, so they were supposed to put out, what I gave you was
Yes.
just the summary
General.
of who could attend and who couldn't, but they're supposed to send out more stuff tomorrow about,
Okay.
and that's when the principals were kind of waiting on an update so they could, and athletic directors were kind of
They're
waiting.
actually going to be sending the, recording of the Zoom meeting to superintendents and to all the principals in the state so that everybody can listen to it again and understand it, and they're gonna send out a little, I talked to, Cindy Daniel today, I gave her a call because Hunter High School had a suggestion, and that was that they would be able to form some sort of a drum corps, so that at least some of the kids could be part of this, since it's not an aerosol, you know, percussion would not be spreading aerosol, you know, germs or whatever. So Cindy liked that suggestion and said that they were going to take it to Charleston, to the governor and to DHHR. She felt that was a decent suggestion, and she would see how that would go. But they are going to send out, as Mr. Castle has said, they're gonna be sending out a reboot or whatever of
A
today's
revamp
meeting.
of the,
Yeah,
they're like everybody else, they're living day to day and change to change.
I am gonna speak up on something, I know it may not be popular with some, but if you can be squatted down across from somebody on the line in football, and you're not wearing a mask and you're breathing right into that person's face. When you're tackling them, you're down there face to face. But a band, I know that some band instruments, they got covers for the bells and all, spread out, I don't see how that's any more dangerous than playing football without a mask.
and when I spoke with Miss Daniels today, she said that, they were going on the recommendation of the DHHR and the governor's office, and that was why that decision came down. So I'm not so sure that she doesn't agree. She didn't say that.
Yeah,
but
right.
She did make sure that I understood that was not an SSAC only, mandate from on high.
I think that's really probably more of an effort to keep the numbers low.
Less people.
I think it's a less,
It
it
might be.
doesn't, I don't think it's an argument, and so I don't think you could win that argument to say that one was safe and the other is not. I think it's more of a numbers game, and they're trying to, I think they're trying to squeak in 2 weeks and then see what happens. I really do. I really think they're trying to get into those first 2 weeks and then take another look.
And I don't think anybody envies their positions down there. They're between a rock and a hard place too, so.
Did they, are you gonna have if we go by this SSAC recommendation, are we gonna have a definition for immediate family? Who that includes? Because
Are you gonna give them the Bernie Dolan interpretation as well?
I did not hear him personally say it. My principals indicated,
Okay,
well,
let me hear-
Mrs. Sigley and Mr. Kelch, from Hunter High School indicated that he said it was in the household, family in the household, and then he added on the Weavis record.
Yes, they were relying, I listened in on most of it till I went nuts, and then I had to turn it off. But he suggested that Weavis be the reference point as to who you were gonna include in the household. Now, that may change tomorrow, but that's correct.
Yes.
It got crazy.
Yeah, I heard in another state with their athletic association and their DHHR is even monitoring who's coming in. They're gonna have somebody come around and check, and if so, shut the thing down and what's going on. I've heard that in other states. I haven't heard that here in West Virginia. But, there's some discussion there from other states going on.
This is gonna be a very, very difficult thing because you're trying to establish if you have an out-of-state opponent, okay, who's their immediate family, how do you get tickets to them? I mean, there's a lot of building blocks to this, so they've got a long road ahead of them.
and this is just something I wanna throw out, and Mr. Langstreet, don't throw anything at me. If it's just immediate family attending and coaches' wives, let's not charge immediate families.
I don't have a problem with that.
I mean,
We're gonna be in trouble. Schools are gonna be in trouble financially, and then that's gonna be even worse. I mean, unless we find some kind of
We can find some funds.
supplement or something like that.
that's what I'm hoping we can do.
It's something we've talked about, it's been on my list for a long time, is to try and do something with lower ticket prices or free student admission.
Yes.
Since our taxes started going up. So it's just, there's been so many other things that have popped up. You're gonna see my financial presentation, we're already way over what we have been allotted from the federal government. But if the county wants to allocate additional carryover budget for this year to cover that, we can do that. It's just a matter of pushing other things back a little bit. And of course, we're doing that a lot right now, but maybe you wait till I present where we are. But yes, schools, even with schools accepting payment, I don't know how they're gonna survive. I mean, football pays for most other athletics in the county, in most cases. So I don't know with the lower attendance how they're going to be able to keep that going without something from the
And
county
then they'll
office.
have concessions.
Right.
Mr. Dolan said, again, quoting him from the thing, he said, concession stands are allowed, and he said, if you don't have very many people there, who's gonna buy stuff?
No reason to have a
We
concession
talked about it,
stand.
'cause we called Karen King on that. Deborah called Karen, she approved it. She approved the concession stand. But again, here you go, yeah. And that's hard. I mean, I can shoot numbers at you that probably shock you, but I mean, that's 75% of the band budget.
Yes, it is.
The external band budget. Out of one year, probably approximately 75%. So, anyway, but it is what it is. I mean, we can't, I wish we could fill all those holes, but we can't. And, we'll see here in a little bit what holes we can fill.
I don't know, a teacher said to me, she said, today almost felt like a normal day. And I thought, wow, if you went to school today and you felt it was almost like a normal day, we can do this. We're gonna have questions, we're just gonna have to do the best we can. We've got a fabulous staff. And I think sometimes we're getting on each other's nerves about things, and it's not to be mean, it's just there's so much. But,
And are we still, did we agree that, once school starts, that we're not doing anything on Wednesdays, no practice, no games?
Said that earlier.
Well, it was mentioned by a member of the board, but I know if all the other schools are doing activities on Wednesdays, they've got some schedules and all that. Some of that's been printed out there by the schools, but that's wanting to be, we'd be the only school system that would not be doing any activities on Wednesday, no practices and all that I'm aware of. So that hasn't come out, but I know it was mentioned at one meeting that we don't need to do anything. That's a good point to bring up, to say that some of the schools have put that out there, and you keep asking me, they've had golf scheduled on Wednesdays, you've got other things that, practice in between on, I think, what is it, Orange Days, you still have practices scheduled, according to the governor's thing. So my recommendation would be allow them to practice, if that's the pleasure of the board. Allow them to practice or have their beats or whatever they have then, so.
And as some
It
people
is an
know,
instruct-
Mr. Banton's back there, Mr. Castle.
Yeah, it is an instructional day.
Wednesdays is your big, is your most important practice day in football.
Yeah.
Are there that many, games or anything held on Wednesdays? I'm thinking specifically volleyball.
I was thinking volleyball or whatever, I don't know.
I can't speak for any other school, except I've been helping Mr. Blair a little bit at Magnolia and Wednesday, and that was mentioned to him, because take a look at my calendar here.
Yeah,
Wednesdays is full.
I just think if you do that, we've got another issue that's gonna be difficult, so I think that if the board would allow that, or my request, or you just wanna leave me to have that authority to keep that rolling, so.
I have issues with having a deep clean on Wednesday to open it up to,
It would be opening up, only the gymnasium would be the only thing, be opening up, and the school would be out there, all the other activities would be outside, I believe, off the top of my head. And then the entrance in there, they just have to do some things differently, but, I understand your concern, that's all.
I mean,
we all
it's still a
do.
gymnasium, everything
Yeah.
that they're going through the bathrooms,
Yeah.
assuming concession area.
There'll
I
be
mean, granted, it's not the entire school, but it's still.
limited numbers, like you said, so that's a different thing, and rerouting and all that, but I'm not aware of any other county that is not doing anything, that they are all allowing that.
I think we have to be, I said earlier, though, we're gonna have to be serious about the masks and doing it, because pictures got put up on Facebook by a visitor that went into the school and took pictures of people practice, and there were kids together hanging out without masks on, there were coaches without masks on. If we're in a building, we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we're sticking to it for everybody.
And I think that's, the leadership there that has to keep an eye on that and have those discussions. You stated here, it's being recorded, it's showing the support of that, I agree. That will help also.
And did I catch it right with the governor that from third grade up, it's masks at all times? It wasn't today with the governor, I think it was Friday.
Yeah, I didn't see that
I
Friday.
thought it
so
was at all times that you're not
be able
be able to social distance.
Okay, I never caught him saying socially distance.
And then we get
And that's-
clarification that comes out from we're getting a new reentry, book that will be out also, I'll send that too, so all those
Okay.
things, like I said, it's been modified. Like I said, I shot the bus video, all of a sudden, you notice it was out there, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and we got a new one, so I had the news ask me for that.
That's why I couldn't find it.
And you couldn't find it, cause, yeah, it was gone, but it came out in the new update, and I resent that to you as soon as it came out that day, so I was looking at that when, I had an interview by WTRF just, last week, I think it's aired tonight, so, on Wetzel County, so. And again, I tried to state the same thing that you guys said, site-based to support it and see what we can do that way, and I think that's what we've done, and I think that's what the principals and directors have done a fabulous job, and staff, done a fabulous job with that.
Anything else that relates to reentry, board members?
So you guys are okay with the Wednesday deal, then, that's what I see you got some doubts, but we're doing everything.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the hard part, but I
is it
think we
what I
gotta
would
work.
choose? I don't know that's what I would choose, but I mean, what am I, you know what I mean? You
I
got
would say
schedules already set.
unless something drastic changes,
The biggest thing that would bother me is if I saw, that'll sound like I'm accusing somebody gonna do it, or maybe I'll give an idea, but the last thing I wanna see though is in the middle of the school day, going, oh, so there's nobody here, I'll bring in that team at noon. Ooh, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Well,
That's the kind of thing
I
you
don't think
wanna
any of
see.
us would support that, so I
Right.
think.
That's what I'm not accusing, that's what I'm
No.
saying, I'm just saying.
Wednesday's technically a school day, and I think
Yeah,
we've
you
given,
gotta be after.
I think we've given people, schools, the opportunity, if they wanna use that time or at least sometime during that day for kids to come in for extra help and
Right.
et cetera. So, yeah, the employee's not free
You gotta
until,
stay after.
till after
Absolutely.
3, whatever.
And that should give the proper time to sanitize everything like they want to, and people still be out of the way.
Absolutely, I think so. Like I said, I think the flexibility, calling around today, I had a few of those questions about Wednesday and called around. Like I said, I didn't get one answer of nobody doing that. But again, these things are changing like crazy, and I understand all of
Whatever the end of the school day is, practice can't start until after then.
Yes, sir.
Would be pretty much the standard, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good question, Ms. Clear. Thank you.
Board members, anything else? Next item on the agenda then is superintendent recommendations. First is the approval of minutes from the regular meeting on August the 10th and the special meeting on August the 7th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Castelo motions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Having been moved and properly seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is personnel matters. Board members, just a couple of adjustments, just on your personnel matters. On the acceptance of the retirement of Joyce M. Martin, that date should be August 21st, 2020 instead of September 1st, so it should be August 21st, 2020. And down under extracurriculars, if you could scratch the Zachary Neff employment as an assistant football coach at Payton City.
And it's nothing on that.
Nothing on him,
Right,
no,
right.
it's.
I was allowed to say that.
It's a numbers issue.
Right. Am I allowed to ask a question here before we vote?
Yes.
I'll try, and if it's wrong, tell me no.
Well,
We're gonna
this is
finish the
personal.
orientation
If
for
it's-
2 more
if it's
months.
specifically about somebody
No,
on the list,
no.
then we have to go.
Yeah,
into
since we had
You
so
gotta
many-
wait 2 more months.
That's what I'm
Lori.
saying, to get orientation is in 2 more months. The 4 nurses, the 2 TIS, the Title I teachers, as I'm looking over this, I'm not seeing that. Are we still interviewing? Is that why?
Nurses, interviews finished up on Friday,
Okay,
so I couldn't put them on this.
Okay.
time.
all right. How
So they'll
about
be
the?
effective.
Interviewing TISs this week.
Okay.
I finally had long enough to breathe.
Okay, so my question is then, if they're a classroom teacher that's going to be pulled out to become a
Right.
TIS, will they be able to start as the TIS right away?
We'll work with what works best for everybody involved, if that makes,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not popping out, but I
No,
will be
yeah.
flexible with what
I
works
just
best.
know
for
some
everybody.
years you have to wait a whole year till you get in it if you don't get
Exactly, a
moved
certain
into that
date,
position.
In this case, they would be going from 200 to 220, so we have to let them.
Okay, because there are a
But
lot
we'll
of
be
people
flexible with when.
that really want them.
September 20,
You know, there's people that are nervous
Yeah.
that really need the extra
Now
help
it's all
support,
different
so.
now, it's cool. There's no rules.
There probably is.
Any other questions as it relates to personnel matters? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Having been moved, is there a second?
Second?
Second.
Been second with Mrs. Fauna. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is ratification of superintendent's recommendation, approval of suspension without pay for a professional employee. Employee does not desire a hearing.
Mr. President, I move that we go into executive session for personnel matters.
It has been moved that we go into executive session under personnel matters. Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Go down the hallway.
Yes, we'll go down, yeah. We are officially in executive session. record show that at 7:09 we are out of executive session and have returned back into regular session. Mr. Tolman.
President Price, I'd ask for your approval of suspension without pay for professional employee Adam Crosman. Employee does not desire hearing, that we suspend him per employee agreement. Ask your approval, sir.
Board members, is there a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second? I will second that motion. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is under routine matters, request to attend Wetzel County Schools, approval request to attend, as submitted and released from Wetzel County Schools. I'm gonna come back to this one more time just for clarity's sake, because I'm still a little bit confused by, have we been officially released from the idea of having to release students or not? Does the new law not, that we do no longer have to, according to the law, release anybody? They can leave our county anytime they want. The only, as I understand the new law, the only county that's involved in that is the receiving county to make a decision as to whether they accept the student or not.
We were advised by the State Department to keep including this on the agenda.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they're just, okay.
I remember that from
By
a
their
previous,
attorney.
from a previous meeting.
So they made a law and then said, but ignore it.
Yeah.
I got you. No, I'm not faulting you, by the way, for that. Alright, so I was just asking, because it keeps coming back up, and it seems counterproductive to what the law was intended to do. But if that's what they're recommending, then let's do it the right way. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Approval for transfers, increases in the budget. And I think you might have a report for us as well, Mr. Lancaster.
Yes. I have nothing that requires action. I do not have any transfers or increases in the budget. But I would like to share with you briefly the finance side of COVID in Wetzel County. So what has happened, and even if you can't see this, I can explain a lot of it. What has happened is we've noticed that, everybody's scrambling. Teachers are scrambling, schools are scrambling, principals are scrambling. And we've found that some of these requisitions, because we're trying to take care of any need in the county. We really are the safety first. We hear the board, we're trying to do the same thing. And so what we found out is that a lot of the requisitions might have been going to this office, or going to transportation, or going to the special ed office. So we tried to say, we've got to start, we don't want to order two of the same thing. We don't want to order hand sanitizer for this classroom when we've already done an order countywide for hand sanitizer. So Matt Duke, accountant in my office upstairs, I had him, we're going to streamline everything through him. He's very good. I'm good with Excel. He is very good with Microsoft Excel. So I had him put this together so that we can really keep track of what we're doing, what each school has requested, make sure we're not duplicating anything, and then come up with a dollar amount, because we've already talked about the ESSER funds, $726,000, but the ESSER funds, we've already talked about what that covers. It doesn't cover what we need. And so what camera do I look in to thank the voters of Wetzel County? Voters of Wetzel County, thank you very much for the excess levy, because I always wonder what these other counties are doing that have no excess levy and don't happen to live in a county that's over the richest reserves of oil and gas in the country. So we have that luxury, and the board is willing to spend that money, but I want to make sure you know where we are now, and it's going to change tomorrow. I'm going to have another request on the desk tomorrow. The details in here, I'm not going to go over that, but every requisition we've received has been processed. But that is summarized here, and we have it by school and what they've requested, and we color coded it just to make sure we're getting this organized. I don't need to go over all of that. The latest thing, the last thing It's not the last thing, because I have one on my desk, and I'll have more tomorrow morning. But the last big thing that we processed, we talked about student individual sneeze guards that sit on a desk. And that was a tough decision, because it's expensive when you add up all the students we have in accounting. And what's the right decision? I mean, nobody can answer that. We did realize if we didn't have to use masks, we thought that is the right decision. But when we're finding out that we can't really get a green light to not use masks by having this, unless you're 6 feet apart, then we went to the schools. We're listening to what our principals want. And most principals have said that they would like those individual desk guards, even if they had to wear masks, because they could do, it's an extra layer of protection, and it allows them to do more group work that they wouldn't have been able to do before. So we looked into that. We made the order today. We also added individual teacher desk guards, sneeze guards, just the plexiglass we've talked about before, but from this company. So it will be here on time. Should knock on wood, but there's no indication that it won't be. I mean, honestly, pretty good lead time coming out of New Jersey. But looking at this, you know, we've got the cost per school, what everybody's requested. I'm going to go past here and look at the summary, okay? What the schools have already purchased individually and what they've sent in. The county comes next, which is the larger expenses, because we purchased the major items county-wide. So when you add up everything that they've purchased, and this is everything from individual lockers, so backpacks don't touch, to new hooks, to crates, to how to maneuver band equipment from one place to another. There's all kinds of things that go into this, things that I wouldn't have thought of, but the teachers have thought of, that we're trying to say yes to about everything. We're being reasonable as reasonable as we can, but moving on here. So when you add those expenses, then you got to look at what the county has done. You know, bottled water, that's $70,000, $71,000. That's something we never had to purchase before. We had water fountains, we had fill-up stations. We have bottled water now. The mask we've talked about, the disinfectant sprayers, the disinfectant hand sanitizer, wipes, additional laptop cases for pre-K2. The additional nurses I've added on here, because that's an additional cost we weren't going to have, but now we do. Teacher sneeze guards is roughly $33,000. The student sneeze guards that we're ordering based on the numbers that we put together and Matt Duke put together is another $56,000. So let's talk about where we are now. So total already spent is $899,000. Okay, think about this nationwide. Wow. We're just small Wetzel County. We spent $899,000. The ionization system, the HVAC, I put on here, not saying we're going to do it yet. Will you talk about that? I don't know if you will. We got an estimate from New Martinsville School. So this number was our early estimate. We have the estimate, what, $70,000 roughly?
Roughly at New Martinsville School. Yeah.
Roughly at New Martinsville School. So this number will probably go up. The actual number is closer to 70 at New Martinsville School. This is their estimate to do that at all the schools. So I threw it on here. It's a different color because we haven't decided to do it yet. But when it's all said and done, if we do that, and if it's at that price, again, it'll probably be higher, we will have spent, you know, over $1.1 million COVID-related expenditures, okay? $1.1 million in Wetzel County COVID-related expenditures. So some people might say, well, you got a grant, you got money from the federal government. Yes, we did. We got $726,000. Thankful for it. I mean, it's wonderful. $726,000. Maybe there'll be another round. I have not had any guarantee that there'll be another round. But we spent $726,000. We spent over $1.1. Our overage right now is, if we do the ionization and it comes in at that level, is $422,000. So It's gotta come from somewhere. Understand it's gotta come from somewhere. If there are things we've already purchased, I don't think there's anything that we purchased that we would say no to. I really don't. I think our process has been pretty good, and I think there's not a teacher that can say, you haven't done financially what you could have done for us. But I just want you to understand that 422,000, which will grow tomorrow, that we have to take our carryover balance, which we're lucky enough to have one. I'm working on financial statements. In the midst of all of this, I'm trying to finalize those. So we should have a good carryover from last year's budget. There are reasons for that. But when we rebudget those funds, that's going to have to come first. That money is going to have to come off the top. And whatever else we have to do has to come off the top until there's another magical grant that comes through or help from the federal government that we can put towards that. But we have to take it from there. So just understand that some of the things that we were going to do, that we may have had plans to do with our carryover, we'll still be able to do other things. We'll have a pretty good carryover. But the first thing we got to do is cover the things that we're already buying now. So I think there's a lot more information on this, but I think that's the main information I wanted to share with you, just to know where you are. Thank the voters of Wetzel County for allowing us to do this, to make our students safe, our teachers safe as we can be during this pandemic. And we're in such a good position financially in Wetzel County that I feel for the counties that aren't, because they've got tougher decisions than we have to make. We get to say yes to most things. That being said, there are things that come through on my desk right here in front of me that's not on this spreadsheet. This is a total of $63,000 for art supplies. You know, things have changed with art. I can look at Tammy Wells because it's kind of come through her office, but the art teachers have got together and they said these are the things we need because we can't share supplies anymore. Now, do I add that to the spreadsheet and come up with that with our carryover balance? I can do that. That's the kind of decisions that are tough because there are other people that we haven't seen yet that are going to say, well, here's something else I'd like to do. So I'm thinking right now, the feeling I'm getting is that we'll do that for the art teachers. Add that number to this spreadsheet, subtract that number from our carryover balance, just so you know how things are working with that. If anybody has any opinions on that, I'll be glad to listen to it, but I'm sitting on those. I just received those a few days ago, and I just thought this would be a good time to bring that up, because that's the sort of thing that happens, not in that level, but in, you know, it's a tough situation to try and do that, but I think I'm thankful to have the staff that I have upstairs. I mean, really, the finance staff that I have is top notch, and I think we've been doing the best with what we've given, and it's easier when you say yes, and it's also harder because you got a lot more work to do and a lot more processing to do. But that's my update for you. I just wanted to give that to you. That's all that I have.
Mr. Lannister, scroll back to the list of what the county has bought.
What the county is about, like right here?
It's right there. And most of those purchases, we hopefully are one-time purchases. We may have to buy them again, except for one, and that's the school nurses.
Very well said.
And that's just not a one-time deal. And I'm very much for that. But we have to understand that will be a cost we will have next year and the year after and the year after and the year after.
And he's absolutely right, and that's what I've talked to my accountant with today. I said, that's one right there that we're going to have to come up with next year if we decide to continue that program. That's roughly $320,000 that this SRF's a one-time thing. So the state aid formula that's part of why we have a good carryover balance. This House Bill 206 allowed us to keep a little more of our local share of taxes. And a little more in Wetzel, Doddridge, Tyler, Marshall is a lot more to some of these other counties. So part of that bill was also to help give you some more state aid to pay for nurses and things like that. So that in combination, yes, we do have to come up with that extra money, but the state aid formula brings a little extra in for that sort of thing as well. So not that level, but you're absolutely right.
Will we have a printout of that?
I could give you one, and I'll be glad to, just know that it'll change.
But, yeah, I know it'll change them, but that way we have the ability to tell the voters here, here's where your levy money's
Right.
going and
Yeah,
stuff
I
like
can get that to you tomorrow, I can email all of you,
Okay.
and
Yep.
then have a hard copy for you if you need.
I think it'll allay some fears too, because staff, service personnel and professional personnel are worried about safety, parents are worried about safety. You know, here's showing, look, we are doing this in the
Yes,
safety.
that's part of why I wanted to present this. I think, coupled to let you know the financial impact, but also to let the public know what we've done, which is a tremendous amount of activity to make this safe.
Yeah, I think that'd be good PR also.
I'll get that ready and send that to you, Mr. Tubman.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate all the work that goes into that. I'm cautious never to speak on behalf of the board, so, but I think there's a level of trust here that you guys are handling the needs as they come to you without having to run to us for, can I buy 2 boxes of tissues?
Yeah.
You know, we're relying on you, but we're also trusting that you guys are making good decisions as it relates to that.
Have these, well, I guess it'll be when Mr. Batten talks. I was gonna say, have the things all come in yet that we're ready to open with kids?
What we're looking at there is the bottled water for Mensters. Mrs. McPherson handled most of that. That's being delivered. The masks with Cintas, all the disposable masks that are for students younger than 6th grade. And those we have received those. The cloth masks, as far as I know, they should be here on Wednesday. The returnable bins that'll be situated at mainly the entrance or the exits at the buildings, plus on the buses, those have arrived. Disinfectant sprayers and disinfectant. The disinfectant, 75% of the disinfectant has arrived. We have that. The sprayers, which has been my concern from day one. The backpack sprayers, which are 2.5 gallon sprayers, that we had purchased one for every building, and then one for some of the high schools that had field houses. It's something that they don't have to transport a lot of the stuff back. Those will be here tomorrow. As far as the misters, they call them, they're the handheld ones that are not battery operated, that will be on every bus. Those will be here next week. We have received part of those. The battery packed, or the battery operated individual sprayers for all the custodians is in question whether it won't, I don't believe they will be here by September 8th. But with talking to some of the principals, they believe the backpack sprayer will be able to take care of those classrooms, because the first week there are only 3 classes or 3 grade levels per day. Next week you had kindergarten in, and you have 4. So we're hoping that couple weeks will buy us some time. The disinfectant is here, so that can be dispersed in a bucket with a rag, and things could be wiped down. So I'm hoping the training for custodians and bus operators is on Wednesday. We will make the trip throughout the county, because I cannot get the bus operators and all custodians socially distanced in one area. So we will head to the 100 area Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, meet with Long Drain 100 custodians and the 100 area drivers. We'll go over to Valley High School. After that, meet with Shortline and Valley High School custodians along with the Shortline drivers. And then that afternoon we'll be at New Martinsville, meet with Payne City Elementary, Payne City High School, New Martinsville School, and Magnolia High School custodians, along with all riverfront drivers. So they will receive training on the disinfectant and on the sprayers.
And the substitutes, right?
And
Right.
substitutes, yes. Substitute custodians, substitute bus operators. Okay, hand sanitizer has arrived. There are individual, we have 500 bottles, 32-ounce bottles, have arrived. That could continue on every month, okay? We also have 90 wall dispensers that would be located at any entrances, the commons area, cafeteria area, restroom areas. The only thing with dispensers are they are not allowed to be installed in hallways, okay? But that has arrived. The maintenance crew with Jamie, Doty and them will begin installing those wall-mounted dispensers at the schools. And most of those, Mark Roy has delivered almost all of those. The whites, that's the hot commodity. We have some, okay? Hopefully we can get the rest of them, but, you know, like I said, we have the disinfectant, so it might take a rag with the disinfectant. That's basically about it, Mrs. McPherson.
You got it.
That's where we're at with supplies.
Mr. Batten, I'm impressed
I'm too.
with the national shortages that we've been able to get what we can. Thank
It
goodness
was
we didn't
like
need
what-
a candy
what-
jar lid.
Some of the companies that we went with were really good about it, so, like I say, especially, well, not to single any of them out, but all of them worked really well with us, so. The battery operated individual sprayers are what's really, questionable to start. Hopefully we can buy a couple more weeks. The vendor will be part of the training on Wednesday, so I'll know more about that then, so that's where we are with supply.
The key to that is we've got the supplies to clean our buildings. We may not have the most convenient way to do that yet,
Right.
but we have the product necessary to make sure our buildings are clean, and I think that's the key to all that.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Lancaster's presentation or anything related to those? If not, the next item on our agenda is first reading of revised Wetzel County Policy IIP Virtual Distance Learning Policy. If you look, board members, I think there was just basically one adjustment that was being made. It was marked in blue in your packet, where basically it's just giving some flexibility to that 10-day policy as to whether somebody can move from one to the other. I realize there's good and bad to both of those things. To allow it creates a potential problem, but to disallow it may also create a potential problem. So I think we leave it to the wisdom of those who are going to be managing those students and deciding, you know, obviously you guys are going to catch on if somebody's in person, and next day I know I want to be virtual again, and the next day I want to be, you guys can go, no, okay, we're done with the seesaw. Anyway, that's my opinion about that. Are there any questions or comments as it relates to this policy change?
I think Mr. Marcus already answered that earlier.
Thank you.
All right.
I move that we approve on the first reading, county policy IIP, virtual distance learning.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I second.
Has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Part 8 was the establishment and approval of board's vision and goals. If you recall, we talked about those in our work session. Those were sent to you then. We just had those basic three kind of vision statements that we agreed to. I can read those quickly, just for the record's sake. But we had, the vision was that Wetzel County Schools will provide a well-rounded education that keeps all students engaged in learning. Wetzel County Schools will establish a culture throughout the district where students, staff, and visitors feel safe and welcome. And finally, Wetzel County Schools accepts the responsibility and privilege to provide quality instruction for all students. And so that's just the generic, basic vision that we have for our school system. In our work session, we talked about the various challenges that we're presently in. Maybe in the future, we might talk about more lofty things. But right now, we understand the climate and the challenges that we're in. No action necessary on that particular item. If there aren't any questions as it relates to that, the next item on the agenda then is the approval of goals for the county superintendent. Again, we had our work session on those goals. We all received, board members, are there any questions, amendments, changes, thoughts that you have as it relates to what you were sent? And I think everything that we talked about in our meeting was added to that list and updated. So is there no questions then? Is there a motion to accept the superintendent? Do you have any additions, Tom?
No, sir.
Is there a motion then to accept the approval of goals for the county superintendent?
So moved.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
A second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting the approval of the goals for the county superintendent, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Are there any board member or committee reports today?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't have a, report. I just want to have a, public thank you to Molly Toppy with the extension office and her team. There was a post on Facebook I screenshot and sent to Mr. Toman where they are offering, to make badges with every employee's picture so that it's not as scary for our students seeing only half a face. They can see the entire face throughout the day. So yes, they've offered, they've just said any employee can reach out to them, and so I just wanted to make a public thank you to the office, to the extension office.
Do we have to, do the staff members have to provide the picture to them, or?
I would assume.
No, I just wondered.
Yes, they were emailing a picture to her. The teachers were emailing a picture themselves to her.
Okay.
Any other committee reports?
Mr. Tillman and I, on Thursday last, attended the Mid-Ohio Valley Technical Institute. It was basically a lot of financial report approval and change orders, etc. It didn't really, the only thing they really talked about that would be of any consequence was the students coming to MOVT, and if they arrived at MOVT and were found to be ill, getting them back to their home school. And I think the basic agreement was that they would try to get them back if it was impossible for their parent to not pick them up down there. But you know, like Mrs. McPherson said, you have to go through, jump through a bunch of hoops and not say who it is and all that kind of stuff, and try to find the parent. And sometimes that's tough with some of these kids, you know, 30, 35 minutes down there. So
I think the biggest hope on that would be that you would catch that before they ever got on the bus to go down.
Well,
You know,
That's
I
the
mean,
hope.
you would hope.
well, that was one of their suggestions. So I don't know if we want to try to incorporate that or not, Mrs. McPherson.
We do have a form that the nurses were working with our tech department on, where every student and staff member would, the very first thing they would do, open up their computer, fill out this form. If they had any of the symptoms, it would immediately notify the school nurse, who could then pull that student aside and do the COVID screening.
So they're going to do a self-assessment more or less, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what's been recommended.
We'll communicate that with them down there then. And their Mid-Ohio Valley Technical Institute's reentry plan is on what Mr. Toman just distributed to the board members. They've given the dates, etc. on there, and This Dr. Hunt put a welcome on there and talked about all the different, their plans, so they've worked diligently down there to create, you know, an atmosphere of safety, and they're just trying to do the same thing that we're doing here. And they're just wondering where the year's gonna go, just like we're wondering where the year's gonna go. They're just as nervous about things down there as we are here, so.
Mr. Caslow and I had to hear all the other superintendents about how excited they were and how they're trying to come up with some direction and different things that happened too, right? That was
Yeah.
entertaining.
Well, I thought, okay, we're kind of on top of the game here. They were like, they're always raising heck with the State Department about they don't know anything, but the State Department is trying their best. It's just like everybody else is trying their best.
That's what said, to have the State Department give you a re-entry plan draft and give you all those things. I just heard Wisconsin legislatures sued the governor, and they have now individual counties have their own process of coming up with that, and because of they took that away. So I'm tickled to death with what the Department of Ed and what we're getting. Sometimes the governor's office, they pivot and change a little bit, but I think what we're getting from Superintendent Birch and the State Department's been pretty good, and our DHHR and the Health Department. I'm thrilled to death. It's been a very good teamwork. So.
Are there any other items then?
Other items, I'll leave it to Mr. Cook, and we'll pass around to the directors, anything they want to add. Mr. Cook, anything?
Yeah, I got a couple of things here, Mr. Combs. We had new employee orientation on August 20th, and Mr. Castler stopped in, said hello to them. Thank you for that. We had about 15 here. It was a good turnout. Got a lot of information passed, and I think they walked out a little less, had less anxiety after they left anyway. But new people, they were all excited about day one and getting into the classrooms, and it was a good group. So I was real pleased with
The
what we had.
feedback from some of the people from Magnolia was that they were glad they were here, and it was beneficial. They felt more comfortable, just like you said. So
I thought so, and I was better at it this year than I was last year. Last year I stunk. So.
Mr. Caslow had the Zoom meeting with me down there at Maltese as soon as it was over. It was 9 o'clock and 9 o'clock, so I said, let's put your nose in here and say hello. So we did that. So.
Yeah, it was a good group, and I'm pretty excited about the people that we got. Well, I did. I was terrible last year.
we're lucky to
I
have
would've fired me that
we're
day.
lucky to have the people that we have, because it's just a tough year to apply for a job and go into an unknown situation and everything.
And they're still excited about
Right.
it. So it was a good day. Couple things on re-entry. We did talk from the high school side. They said what would make them feel a lot more comfortable is if they had some type of facilitator to deal with the liaison, to communicate with the students that are out there on distance learning, along with the virtual I lost it. The virtual learning out there for West Virginia, with West Virginia Virtual Learning. And we had talked earlier on, a month ago, about having 47 people and this and that, and then we came down to what we need. Well, right now, they're saying, if you give us somebody that can be that person in between to make sure that the kids have somebody to reach out to get that information to the teachers. So I'm looking at a half-time position for 7 through 12 and a half-time position for pre-K through 6, because pre-K got thrown into the mix here last week, which we had no intentions of getting involved with pre-K at that time, but here we are. So I was looking at that, and I want to throw that downrange to you guys, and not only to assist the students with whatever issues that they're having. And I think it's important that they have somebody out there to reach out to while the teachers are in the classroom and they can't respond all the time. And that would be, like I said, 2 half-time positions, one dealing with the high school, one dealing with the lower grades, with having certifications at the high school level and having certifications down at the lower level.
Would those be posted, can those
Yeah,
be
they would be
posted for
posted.
a one-year position only, or no?
I think that this one, I think given the situation, I think we possibly still can put that up as a COVID position for halftime, yes.
You know, I mean, I'm not trying to cheat.
Because that's actually what it is.
But if we don't need it for next year.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you still have to go through that process, even if it says 1 year, that's the hard part, so you
Yeah.
still gotta go through that RIF and transfer.
They still
That's the
get-
hard part for it, you know?
Yeah, they still get all those benefits of a full-time.
Right, I fully understand that, but, you know, we're
Just to let them know.
talking, you know, that might be.
Right, but when it's a clear
They may
expectation
agree
that
to
this
that.
is really only 1
They may
year.
agree with the
Possibly.
termination hearing and do all
Right.
those things, so that'd be easier.
Yeah.
Right.
So those are the two things that I was looking at there.
What do you think of those?
Are you looking at two different individuals then?
I would say,
One
yes,
person?
two different individuals.
You know, then they have about half-time positions, you pay full-time benefits.
Yes, sir.
People don't realize that, but the health insurance for a half-time person is the same as a health insurance for a full-time person.
Mhm.
Would it pay
And
off
then
to
when
do
you
a
do
full-time?
reduce that position, if it's a veteran teacher that has applied and got that position, they don't lose their job, somebody on down the line is
Absolutely,
gonna lose their
yeah.
job.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, that's the only thing I have
And move out
just
the
caution
classroom.
about hiring new personnel, that it's not easy to unhire them.
It's not as clean as you might think.
No,
it
it's
would
not.
be.
No.
In your logic mind, you think, I
That's right.
need a role fulfilled for a year, and I'm gonna hire that role for a year and move on. But
Well,
it
and
doesn't
you had
work
said
that
at one
way
of
in
the board
personnel
meetings,
laws.
we need to, if we keep hiring, we need to see where we're not going to, you know,
Yes, sir.
And
put the
even
numbers down.
when there's no longer a need, it's difficult, those positions become like they're forever. And people don't wanna give them up and, so forth, it becomes difficult.
Are you saying this would have been in lieu of all those,
Yes.
instead of these
All those other
tutors that we
supplementals for that.
approved for 1 to 5?
Yes.
None of that.
No, these
This
would be
instead.
these would, one liaison for the high school, and they would take care of all the high schools. And I was hoping that a half day would take care of it, and in the beginning, we're probably not gonna get it hired, probably have a sub in there, and then we'll have a better idea of, is this something that we can only, that needs to be a full-time position, because we don't know what this thing's gonna evolve into. And I think to make, the high school teachers feel better and the elementary teachers feel better is to have somebody that they can lean on towards, answering those questions when they're not available. I think that's what they're requesting, and if that helps them out.
If we can't find anybody for those two, and hopefully we will, but if we can't, could we pay after-hour teachers, tutors?
I think that's where you end up going.
Okay.
And I will tell you that I would favor that. I'm not against hiring the two halftime person, but I would favor it if you go to extra contracts, because they're much, much easier to eliminate going down the road than it is a halftime or full-time position.
Was there a sentiment that they didn't think they would find enough teachers willing or interested in doing the extra duty?
I just don't think we were going down that road yet till we saw how this thing was
So
going to
that
evolve.
conversation really hasn't happened because we're still, I got you.
I mean, we've tossed it around, we
Yeah,
just don't know yet
No, I
where it's gonna end up.
I would support Mr. Yeager's. I think we have a better chance of probably getting people to bid on extra duty contracts than we would the full-time one, but that's just an opinion on my part.
Okay.
But we can't make a motion on that since it's not really on the.
No, it's not really a motion.
No, and the hard part is what we've got is, you guys authorized us to hire, but then that's a new thing, so we wanna bring it to you, so that's the hard part of, that coming up this close.
Well, it goes back to what Mr. Price said, giving you a certain,
And
we
then,
trust you.
absolutely, so just wanted to be transparent and present that to you guys. And we can read between the lines of what I've got support, so I can tell.
I mean, it's not.
Can they
that
be
it's-
posted though without board action or no?
Yes, yes, I think that all that is just a courtesy, and something,
Okay.
they come to us and ask, we'd like to post a new position, and because they understand it creates difficulty down the road if we were opposed to it, they went and did it anyway.
Right, I understand, that is, so that's something that can go ahead and go forward with, right?
you say so.
Yeah. That's what they're not necessarily looking for board action so much as they're just looking for our
Support.
eyes. And so-
Yeah, I'm looking at
You
your
don't
eyes.
see, you don't see anybody putting thumbs down.
Those smiles.
And again, at the end of the day, I'm trying to trust the people that are working it on the ground. And I'm with Mr. Yeager, and it sounds like maybe others on the board, that it always concerns me when we're putting new positions into effect, because it just can have a ripple effect later. But if that's what the consensus is that's the best approach to resolve this issue of somebody staying connected to those virtual learners, then I'm not gonna stand in the way of that.
And we still have to do that as far as the state.
It's gonna have
We
to
have
happen
to have
some
a
form or
mentor
another.
It's
involved.
all new, but that's
I
just
have a
they're trying
personnel question for you, since you know this, or you. I'm
I
sorry,
know.
I just know that he was in it for so many years, excuse me. Let's say that a retired teacher decides they'd like to do that half-day, whatever. And I know you don't have your seniority when you're retired, but once you get hired back on, you get your seniority back. So if we had a retired teacher that took one of those half-time jobs, they'd get their seniority back, so that when everything, am I correct on that? That's what I'm saying, so that if there has to be transfers or layoffs or whatever at the end of the next year, they would have their years back.
I think you're talking about for pay purposes.
I meant for seniority purposes.
Like they want to continue working next year.
Yeah,
if
let's say
do
they
that
decide they
position.
wanna stay on again.
I don't believe that once you retire, your seniority's gone. The only thing you have is your experience for pay purposes.
I thought once you got hired back on, you got it back, because we
Now,
had.
that's if you're,
a
if
case
you
quite a
were,
few
if
years
you were
ago,
laid
probably
off,
30 years ago,
if you were
then-
laid off a RIF,
Right.
yes. But if you quit, you voluntarily resign or retire, your seniority for this county's gone.
Even if you get hired back.
Even if you go someplace and teach 2 years and come back, you do not get your seniority.
Okay. I just know of a case that was probably 30 years ago, where a group of teachers went and fought and they got their seniority, but that was a long time ago. I think it was probably 30 years ago. 35.
The teacher that if applied for a position that was retired and they had 35 years' experience and a master's degree, they would be paid according
Right,
to that.
right. They don't get their seniority. Okay.
I know this isn't the clarity you were looking for, but I think what you're hearing from us is we might prefer that we had gone to extra duty approach, but we're with you. If you all are telling me that that's the best approach, then I'm not gonna come back later and say, I told you I didn't like that, and it created a mess.
Okay.
You understand what I mean?
Whatever works
Yeah.
best.
Now, I could be gone tomorrow, and the next guy could, run through the ringer over it, but that's between you and me.
I guess a couple more things here. I know the administrators have really done a fabulous job out there in the buildings, and they're working. The directors, great job. Mr. Batten, everybody's just pulled together. And I know there's times when we didn't agree on everything, but found a way to reach a consensus on a lot of things. But yet, even with that consensus, once we get into play, things change. And our administrative team out there has really worked to make things happen in the buildings, just like this board has requested, putting it at the lowest possible level when they're making decisions out there to better their buildings. And it's not the same for New Martinsville as it is for Short Line or out at Long Drain. And reaching out to each one of those principals today. I don't know how many Mr. Tobin got a hold of. I got a hold of a few, and they were all very positive about day one. So I thought that was good. It's a good feeling, and it's exactly what you said earlier in the meeting about the one teacher being excited about the first day, which is great, and the principals weren't losing their minds. Now, they are to the point, but they weren't losing their minds. So everything's coming together. Amanda and her team finished interviews for the nurses last Friday, as we mentioned, so they'll be on your next agenda, but they'll be starting, I think 4 of them are actually starting on the 26th. And then the other one was a few days after that, given proper time for it. for letting their other jobs know, 2 weeks' notice. We have been in contact with EQT in regards to, a student was here earlier and he didn't get the word about us not going forward today in regards to the military and grants that we're working on through EQT. And Lauren, how do you pronounce her name? Bernardo? Mr. Toman introduced Lauren Bernardo to us, and she's gonna be coming and meeting with the board here in the next couple of meetings. And then we're gonna bring those students together and present them with the opportunity to get a grant of about $4 grand. It was unbelievable when they came up with that number. If they go to boot camp and come back, all they gotta do is give us a picture. And they're gonna be getting a check from EQT for that amount, which I thought was fabulous. Because knowing those kids, when they actually finish boot camp, finish school, by the time they walk to one end of the line, they start off with a check and they get to the other end of the line and they're basically handing it over to pay for all their gear and their uniforms and everything like that. So they have nothing left. They got enough to get home, and that's about it. And this opportunity for them to have a little bit of resource there and a little bit of money in their pockets after they get back home, I think is going to be a welcome situation for them. And I thought that was great that this company stepped up to offer that.
And Lauren's out of a law firm out of Houston, Texas, so she's up here working with EQT, so she's wanting to also maybe partner up and doing some stuff with us also. So it's been amazing with EQT, and the other lady that I had a nice Zoom with, Ellen Rossi, was with Foundation with EQT. And again, I'm looking at some possibilities with STEM. You guys had that question, I think, to see what I could do from foundations, and there was a lot of interest in what we could do, and I've been really pleased with that. So they've been pretty busy. I mean, a couple of days a week really been in contact with them. So how can we extend that to do some other things with some other oil and gas companies? So I know I've talked to with Blue Racer and possibilities right there, but with COVID right now, some things have slowed down a little bit. So just want to thanks, Mr. Cook.
Yeah, that's really all I have at this point in time. If you guys have any questions for me.
Then go ahead and get who's next.
What else? Mr. Mike, so we're good?
We're good.
Mr. McPherson, anything
I'll
additional?
go real quick. I work with some smart, hardworking folks. We made a plan back May, June, and it's been nice to actually have a plan that actually, other than a few gentle lefts and rights, has turned out well. We're waiting on one more shipment of laptops. There's been some supply issues here and there, but when we get that last one, I can already say that 7 of our 8 schools, the student laptops are in the building, pre-signed in with the kid's name on it. Pre-K through 4, we went ahead and pre-signed them into both Schoology and their email, saving the passwords to make it easier on those folks. As of today, all teachers have their laptops. So if there's somebody listening and they don't, please let me know. I'll make sure you get one tomorrow morning. The one thing that we're missing that was a big surprise is we don't have cases yet. The lead time was initially 30 days, and as things have been, they changed, and they tell me they're on a boat. I cannot get permission to hijack the boat and get them early. I do have someone willing to drive the boat, but I can't find any other way to do it. So we are stuck without cases, and that's not going to change whether or not devices go home. We're just going to have to roll with it. They're insured, and they're tough enough that we'll just, it's the pros outweigh the cons on that one, and it's just the situation we're in. And some other good news that we've been on this project for 3 or 4 years now with the ViewSonics, the interactive displays in the classrooms. And once we get a few moments to install what we have left, as far as we know after talking to ViewSonic, we'll probably be the first county in the state to have the ViewSonic in every classroom. So everybody on one platform, and the same thing within a few model years at least. So we're pretty excited about that, to be able to say that. Now it's going to change a little bit because some folks are making classrooms out of things that we didn't have as classrooms with the current situation, but we've used Tools for Schools money, which we get from the state every year, to keep buying those, and we won't even be able to touch what they give us this time around with that. If we have to buy 5 or 6 more, it's not a big deal. So a lot of good news, other than the cases, which we can't change.
Just real quick, and I appreciate it. I know it's been a long meeting and everybody's been good to stick around here with us. Do we know anything? I know the state announced that money for Kids Connect, and part of that conversation was about providing one-to-one devices. Is there any conversation about whether counties that were already doing that out of our own money
going to get any benefit from that?
Not that I've heard of.
So who do we, okay, I need to make some phone calls.
I honestly thought there would be something about that, but there has not been anything.
I mean, it's only, man, I don't know, I say it's only fair, but in some ways, there's another county, like Mr. Lancaster was saying out there, that would not have been able to come close to doing it if they don't have the state aid, so maybe I should back off a little bit on that statement, we're blessed. But if that money just kicks back somewhere else, right, then they ought to kick it to us, but if they're gonna use it somewhere where it's more needed, then I would, anyway, it's.
So if you hear
Okay, I guess.
Superintendent from Calhoun and how they're trying to stay afloat.
Yeah, no, I get it,
it's crazy.
that's why I backpedal a little bit off of that, but I was just curious to whether they
Yeah, I've not
provide
heard
any
anything.
resources since we've already spent the money.
And good job, Mr. McPherson.
Yeah.
It's, hardware, why, my goodness, try to buy a printer, it's a most.
Well, I can tell you that we committed to buying these laptops the 1st of March. And had we waited 2 weeks, I think we would have been in trouble. There's local counties that are not getting thousands and thousands of laptops and Chromebooks right now.
The fact that we were already in transition mode,
It's huge.
it kinda helped us,
Yes.
because it just happened to hit where we were already transitioning.
Well, and that was a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
because it had not been a transition year, we wouldn't be
Yeah.
where we are, but at the same time, it was time to transition.
Yeah.
So.
I wanted to comment too on you saying everybody would have the same
Mhm.
ViewSonic or whatever
Yes.
the big, and how, having been a substitute for a few years after I retired, that's so helpful.
Yes.
Because I would go from one room at one school to another room at another school and have to learn it and and I didn't wanna break it. That was one of my fears. I still think though that it would be good for people on the sub list to have a short training on it so that they're using it properly, so they don't have to worry about hurting it.
Mr. McPherson, I just want to say thank you to you and your staff. My daughter picked up her laptop today because of being in the early entrance college classes. And the only complaint she had was that it had 0 life to it and she had to plug it in before she could play.
Well, and I can tell you a little bit about, we do have, we did a test run with these machines, and we found a few battery issues, and we spoke with our supplier, and they've committed to replacing anything with the battery that's not full life as we expect. But yeah, most of them have been done for so long that they've toasted the batteries, so.
But yes, it was very nice being able to log right in, no complications whatsoever. Aside from our own personal internet, but that's a whole nother story.
I simply.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mrs. McPherson, anything?
Sure, met with the nurses, they prepared a PowerPoint to go over with all staff members, talking about procedures that are going to be in place this year that are a little bit different from years past, as well as, preparing a packet that's going to go home with some general COVID information for parents. Basically trying to answer those questions, what do I do now? What does this mean? Things like that. I've also met with my cafeteria managers, met with them on Friday, so they could hit the ground running today on Monday with their staff. We're gonna try to update a couple of things to help everyone out with the meals and the meal pickups and the meal deliveries, so we have a more precise count on everything. So the plan that I had submitted originally to our Big Red plan, it's gonna be tweaked a little bit, but in the long run, it's gonna help everyone out. And then, you know, as we said, today was the first day with our staff back, our 200-day employees back, and 2 out of 3 at the center are filled right now. We still have 1 position. We're searching for that master electrician, so doing what we can.
Thank you.
Ms. McPherson, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You know, one of the most common things that I get from parents is, like, my kids have allergies, what do I send them if they've got a stuffy nose, if they wake up with a sore throat? You talked about the nurses doing the PowerPoint. Is that something that could be made public? Is it that type of guidance?
I haven't looked through the entire PowerPoint in that much depth. I kind of glanced through it to see the information on there. But something that we did discuss was symptoms that are out of the normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you know you have seasonal allergies, that's going to be something when, you know, you click that button that says, you know, you have that symptom. The nurse is going to say, yes, we know you have this, go back to class.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question there?
Somewhat. I think
Okay.
a lot of parents are looking for, you know, what do I do in this situation?
Gotcha.
And the other side of it is, they don't wanna send their child and have everyone pointing fingers, saying, you know, little Johnny's got a runny nose, you know, he's got COVID. And I completely sympathize. We were wearing masks at the hospital. My daughter choked on her own spit. And if you could see the looks that she received, it was difficult. I mean, we hurried and got out of there. It wasn't pleasant. And I think that's what, it just adds to the fear of everything.
And that's the idea of the packet going home, to try to alleviate some of those fears and, you know, to give the parents that next step of, you know, is it this or is it that? There's a fantastic chart that I believe we're going to include with that shows all of the symptoms of COVID, and then it lists the flu, then it lists the common cold, then it lists allergies, you know, and strep, you know, all of those things there. To show you that not everything is COVID. And that was something that the health department stressed to us as well. We have to keep in mind, not every symptom is COVID.
And they really thought this was gonna be a bad flu year too. So it's gonna be a lot of those related symptoms that are gonna come
Right.
out from the flu.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vargas?
Yes, a few items, and I'll go quickly. First, you heard Ms. McPherson say earlier that we're at about 600 students right now who have signed up for distance learning, so that's about 25%. Our survey earlier this summer, as well as our individual phone calls of the families who were concerned and didn't want to send their child back to school, 90% of those families said they would prefer distance learning over the West Virginia virtual. So to our teachers who are listening, that's a sincere thank you from all of us, and to the parents, you know, that's also a thank you for a vote of confidence in our teachers. I've been asked about homeschooling different times. At the end of last school year, we had about 30. As of today, we're around 50. I had a few more phone calls today, so that's continuing to climb. Just wanted to update you on that. The state guidelines have said to limit visitors, obviously, coming into the schools. We did receive a request from a couple of mental health agencies to provide those services, to continue providing those services to our students, and we are allowing that. That is in the guidelines that we, you know, to continue your rapport with your mental health agencies. So in case you all get that question, I want to let you know that we are allowing that. And finally, the last thing, and this is kind of a pat on the back to several people. Probably about 3 weeks ago, Mr. Toman and myself received a phone call from City Council and the Chief of Police letting us know that they weren't going to be able to provide one of our resource officers. And the county commissioners and the sheriff's department is going to add one more officer to cover that for us. Now for this upcoming school year, they are short one officer as well, but I spoke with all the different head principals who are involved, and everybody is going to share this year so we can cover everyone. So to all the principals and the sheriff's office and the county commissioners, thank you. That's all I have.
Questions?
What we're sharing, so that just means that some schools won't constantly have somebody in it, but they will get to the.
If we have an AB format or a 4-day format,
Okay.
either way, there's not gonna be kids on Wednesday. So you're looking at 4 days. Of those 4, there will be an officer 3 of the 4 at all the schools.
And hopefully they'll find somebody and hire somebody else.
Correct. Mr. Kuhn said by the beginning of next school year, guaranteed, hopefully toward the end of the school year, he'll have someone, but he couldn't guarantee that.
No questions? Guaranteed, hopeful. Mrs. Wells?
We covered everything about high school
Okay.
earlier in the
I thought so.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Batten, anything besides?
Yes, on the transportation side, as Mr. Toman stated today, we started trainings with the bus operators. There are some challenges with the transportation side of it. I mean, you know, the number of students that the capacity of the bus that can hold under the guidelines. Also, you know, there will be masks provided for those students. The change, Mr. Yeager, in the 2 videos was it is now 3rd grade and up are required to wear masks, where at one time it was all students, okay? So we'll have to provide a space on the bus for the mask. We have to provide a space on the bus for the return bins, for the cloth mask, and a space on the bus for the sanitizer, hand sanitizer. So along with the mechanics, bus operators, they are going to be working on that to find out, because that has to pass bus inspectors and so forth. So that is a challenge for them. We will, and you know, their main focus during the loading and unloading of those buses are the loading and unloading of those students. Most they can do is to make sure to tell the students, you must pick a mask up, hand sanitizer is available, you know, but they cannot lose track of how many students are loading and unloading that bus at that time. So it's gonna be a challenge for them. They're gonna get together in their territories, their bus route territories, look at their routes and talk and see if we have one route that if it makes it to 4 or 5 days, which we all hope it does, that can, and still under these guidelines, will we have to alter some of the routes, double the routes, and so forth in that case. So they were, like everyone has said, Mr. Cook, I think, Mrs. Farner, they were excited to be there. Thank Mr. Coleman for showing up and, you know, giving him a good welcome and everything. So we'll continue with that this week and with the trainings and so forth. So that's on the transportation side of it. Facility side of it, you saw Mr. Lancaster's on the HVAC, the ionization program. That was done at New Martinsville School, as he stated, because that's the largest square footage building. So that gave us an idea. Since then, the HVAC contractor is going to determine the total amount that it would take to do that program in all of our buildings. So he will give us that amount. You know, I don't know which route we want to go with that, whether we want to pursue that or not, but he will give us that amount, what it would take to do the whole county. And so,
Can short line, since theirs is so old, can it still be done with that system that they have?
that's totally, these devices are in the return air departments of the air handlers and of the individual water source heat pumps. Mr. Yeager's talking about the chiller, and I have a little update on
Okay.
that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
But the question that I have with that, you know, we're getting an estimate on the full amount, but we're probably, if I don't know if the direction is to move forward on that right away. I have had some teachers ask for, one of the things that we did turn down were individual air purifiers. People have asked for that, and I've said we are pursuing the ionization of the HVAC, which my understanding, I'm no expert on it, no chemist, but my understanding is whether there's COVID or not, it's going to be valuable in our schools. So if the board wants us and the superintendent wants us to move forward on it, we can move forward on it as well and take that from our carryover balance. It sounds like yes, we probably should get that quote, and we'll bring it to you when we get the quote. But, I mean, we have a quote from the Martinsville School.
Right, we have that quote, and then we'll have the rest of them. The maintenance agreement that we have with the HVAC contractor will cover these also as far as the maintenance part of the deal. That'll be all in there. But he promised me we'll probably have that final quote by the end of this week or so. Last couple things is just the status on the, sorry I didn't get you a update on the construction projects, but I will. Just a quick one on it. Under high school, the landscaping is almost complete. The new chair lift that goes up from the first floor up to the second floor is being replaced, and it is being installed now. I mean, the chair lift's not here yet, but maintenance had to do a lot of work there to widen the door, widen the opening for it. So that's where they're working on that yet right now. Payton City Elementary, they got new playground equipment. There's more being installed. They will also receive the new coils on their chiller unit that's on the roof, because we had some air conditioning struggles down there. The coils have just almost totally closed over. It does not get the air movement through there, which Short Line got theirs replaced. It should be all up and running now, so that will hopefully buy us some time on that chiller. Okay, without the air movement coming across the compressors, they totally get hot and they shut down.
Mr. Batten, I'm gonna interrupt because I just looked up the number the other day to replace that whole system at Short Line. Our latest estimate, which has been a couple years, is $1.5 million. So again, it's one of those things, there's a reason why we haven't done it, but it's coming. That we're gonna have to get to find that kind of money to make that happen.
And that's also the oldest roof in the county. So that's another thing that you should mind. Then with Valley High School field house, the interior walls are complete. Plumbing and electrical is being done now. And at New Martinsville School, the landscape is complete. We've heard a lot of compliments on that. And there was wall padding that has been installed in the pre-KK, in the older gym there, the pre-KK building. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
No update on the electric at the Valley, if they do have
Electric at the Valley is, met with the designer and the electrician. September the 11th is probably the date they are shooting.
Valley Fieldhouse,
Yeah,
we probably ought to mention that.
Valley.
Not the high school.
Yeah, not the high school, Valley Fieldhouse.
And is that guy happy in his job, and would he like to come and teach electrical classes?
Yeah, he is a master electrician. I talked to him about it. You know.
But they'll have electric at remember they had that issue with the football game?
With
and all
the
that?
first
Yeah.
game, they probably won't have lights.
They're looking at another plan.
They're going to really try.
Yeah.
But as in everything else, supplies are hard to get.
Yeah.
They also had to commit crews to other states because of storm damage and so forth, but they are willing, it's not, I'm not gonna say it's not a possibility.
Yeah.
But Mr. Kimball and Mr. Cohen was there when we met with them and everything, so we're gonna try to work something out there to make sure that works, so.
Good, thank you. Stanford, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I think we covered everything
I
earlier.
think so. Thank you guys, all of you, thank you. Joe
Any
Batten,
other
anything?
questions? I just want to say with Mr. Batten, I want to congratulate you on all the things you're doing too.
Absolutely.
And just what you mentioned about the school buses, about having a place to put the masks that are disposed and storing the new ones and then the hand sanitizer. That sounds like a simple thing, but it's not.
No, it's
Because
not.
those have to be stationary on the school bus.
Exactly.
But our mechanics and drivers will figure it out.
Yes.
Somebody make a patent on that, so
Yes.
sell it.
Yeah, they're committed, they're committed to it. They were,
That's
so,
something.
it's just about like, whether it's curriculum or distance learning, whatever, it's trying to put that puzzle together, so.
Woman, is there anything else?
I have one more thing. Some of you know this, but because of COVID, Mr. Castello and I did not have the full orientation yet for being on the board. So we had part of it, and we're gonna have the other part of it, they said, at the end of the late fall. So I'm appreciative of those of you that have been on it and have helped lead us so far. But I was reading the book that's given out on becoming a better board member, and in a couple different places it came out something that I want to address, and it's communication with the various constituencies. And something that was really big in here is that it's our duty, it's our obligation that we need to be talking to the people in the community, to the staff, to the parents, back and forth. It says formal and informal. I mean, it mentions about a guy that, he said he learns the most about what's going on with his constituents in the grocery store. But it goes on even further to say that if we fail to listen to the fellow citizens or listen to the concerns or give them a chance to interact, then we're not living up to the trust that was put into us when we got onto the board. Now, saying that, I know there are some staff that are afraid to say anything because they're afraid they'll get in trouble for repercussions. And I know there are some parents that are thinking, oh, so does this mean call you for everything? We still have a chain of command. You know, if little Eddie took Linda's rocket ship eraser in class, you don't need to call the board office for that. The best place to do there is call the teacher. If your child's schedule isn't working well, call your school principal, you know, something like that. On major issues, and I've been very active on this part, I think that's probably one of my strengths to be on the board, is that I have listened to so many things and tried to bring the questions up. And I appreciate when you worked with the directors to get the answers to so many of the questions. I still have some I haven't answered yet, but I'll get to them. But I think we have to remember that we're here for our constituents. Somebody asked me the other day, well, how's this going? What's this going? Well, this is my tax money that's being used. They don't have children in school anymore, you know, but we have to remember that. That's all.
And I agree. I think that it is an important aspect of what we do, is to try to stay connected. We can't always do what people want us to do or they think we can
Right.
do, but we certainly have to be willing to listen.
And we might not be
keep
able
our-
to answer their questions
That's right.
And we'll
right
find
away.
answers though.
And we
But
can let
we
them
certainly
know if
will
it's
listen.
something that we can't, but, you
Yeah.
know, yes.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, I appreciate, again, all the work that everybody's been doing. Again, as we're heading into the start, teachers are back now, students are coming. I know that everybody's gonna look at the various circumstances and not everybody's gonna be happy, and people are gonna wish it went this way instead of that way. But we're just asking you to, you know, we've given the flexibility, we've devised plans. Let's just put our power to it, and I have every confidence that if we just work diligently, and stay focused on the path that we're set on, we can get this done, and we can do a good job in difficult times, and I have every confidence that that's exactly what's going to happen with our county. With that said, if there are no other questions or comments, is there a motion for adjournment?
A motion to adjourn?
On motion to adjourn, is there a second?
I'll second.
Has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Do you want, everybody